Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our monthly leadership series. During the month of May, we're going to focus on communicating clearly and effectively. Now, when I was in college, I had a writing instructor who said that he would occasionally bring a dead fish into his classroom and display it on a table at the front of the room. Then he'd ask his students to write about it for about 10 minutes. What he was trying to do was reveal a certain type of writer's block, not one where the author can't come up with a subject or a topic, but one in which a writer can become kind of trapped in a very specific way of thinking. And as he suspected might happen, whenever he conducted this exercise, most of the submissions were brief essays about what he called fishness. It's not a word, but it's easy to see what he meant. His students were writing about what it must be like to live underwater, or maybe what it's like to be that fish, caught, murdered, and eventually displayed on a table for your killers to examine you further. And after going through this process a few times throughout the semester, he told the students what he'd noticed about their thought patterns. And he stressed how perfectly acceptable it would have been for someone to simply write a description of the fish on the table. Instead, they all wanted to impress him with their creative efforts to provide some sort of philosophical or unorthodox speculation that conceptualized the very existence of a fish. I took 2 lessons away from his story. First, I was exactly like those students. So I heard his criticism of my own tendency to overcomplicate things, especially in an academic setting. I have to admit, it kind of irritated me to recognize that, like his students, I would not have thought to describe the fish. It's as if description was beneath my talent, right? My second takeaway is closely correlated to the first. Clearly, there was a disconnect between what the professor asked the students to do and what his students heard him asking them to do. It was very apparent to me that in hearing "write about this fish," they did not hear "describe this fish" as an option. And this month's leadership focus is on achieving clarity in our communication. And for as long as I've been working in organizational leadership, and that's been a very long time, whenever I've asked a leader how he or she can improve in this area, almost 100% of the time I receive an answer about the strategies that they use to share information or to assign tasks or to give direction. And much like that writing instructor and his dead fish, there's a difference between what I'm asking leaders and what they're hearing me ask them. Those students assumed that writing about that fish required some sort of in-depth understanding of what it means to be a fish. And many leaders assume that when they're talking about clear communication, they're talking primarily about how they pass along information or how they provide direction. But it's not. Clear communication is about achieving understanding. And the only way you can know for sure that you've achieved understanding is if you're willing to listen. We have this notion that the very best communicators in the world are out giving TED Talks or delivering sermons on a Sunday morning or hosting a top-ranked podcast. We're mistaken. The best communicators in the world are focused first on actively listening to other people. So when they do speak, they're addressing the exact concerns, needs, pain points, or assumptions that their audience has. Let's break this down into some smaller parts. First, it's impossible to make clear to others what you yourself do not fully comprehend. Leaders, by virtue of being accustomed to providing answers, tend to focus on what they want to say, when the greater challenge that they face is in understanding what other people are thinking or feeling or saying. Effective communication always follows a specific pattern. Identify any potential confusion before giving directions. Anticipate any reasons for resistance before trying to address an audience. Understand your audience's perspective before trying to change its mind. A doctor doesn't prescribe heart medication without first conducting a very careful diagnosis. And a leader shouldn't communicate solutions without first having a very full and clear understanding of the problems that are being addressed. In this way, listening is the diagnosis phase of communication, right? It's placing the stethoscope on someone's chest to hear what's going on with the heart and the lungs before prescribing any medicine. Secondly, people are far more likely to accept instruction, direction, proposals, and especially criticism when they feel heard in the process. One of the most powerful non-physical needs that all humans have is to be understood or to feel understood. When an employee believes that they've been heard, their propensity for defensiveness decreases, their engagement increases, their collaboration improves. And on the flip side of this, if a person feels ignored or misunderstood or overlooked, even the most carefully crafted message is going to be ineffective. Here's the point. People are far more open to your ideas after they believe you understand theirs. This is why the very top salespeople in the world know that listening is the most important skill that they can develop. You'd think listening would be easy, but it's not. First, some of us are just way too opinionated or full of ourselves, and that's a humility issue. But of greater concern, because it's not related to personality type or to someone's ego, is the fact that many of us are just too easily distracted to listen closely when someone else is talking. According to researchers, the average person speaks at a pace of roughly 125 to 150 words a minute, but our brain can easily process over 500 words per minute. So you think about those two differences, this creates kind of a lag time for something else to enter our consciousness and jumble up the whole message. You ever notice that someone will be talking to you and you'll have several secondary thoughts that are going on at the same time? Have you ever noticed that your brain will anticipate a question and come up with an answer long before any question has ever been asked? Have you ever had an idea come up that's completely unrelated to the topic of your current conversation and find yourself planning how you can change the topic even as the other person is in the middle of telling you something that's really important to them? Sure you have. But just because our brain has the capacity to do that doesn't give us permission to do it. In fact, it's poor practice. And it's exactly why someone once sarcastically, but I think accurately said, that the opposite of talking these days isn't listening, it's waiting. Here's some useful advice. A key to becoming a successful leader is listening to understand and not listening to provide a response. Trust me, I can tell you from experience that few things are more embarrassing than offering advice that was never sought or answers to questions that no one is asking. Which segues nicely into another argument in favor of active listening, which is that it demonstrates respect. When we actively listen to what others are saying, we're also communicating several very important messages. Messages like, your perspective and opinion matter. Your experience is relevant. Your contributions have value. See, here's the paradox of leadership in a nutshell. The further up the proverbial food chain someone sits in any organization, the less likely they are to fully understand what's going on in the trenches. Think about the monarchs and the emperors of years past, who typically had to rely on accurate and regular reporting from others to fully comprehend what was happening, whether it was to the citizens in their town squares and alleyways or the soldiers on the battlefield. The same could be said for C-suite executives who spend most of their time around the boardroom table or on the golf course. Without proper focus on the ground level, without a strong intentional plan for listening, a leader can't comprehend operational efficiencies, a leader won't hear customer concerns, and they'll be completely incapable of anticipating emerging risks. So in closing, if you're in a leadership position, here's a simple progressive rule to apply to all of your conversations. 1, listen to the other person's story. 2, listen to the other person's full story. And 3, listen to the other person's full story first. In my experience, if you take this approach to managing a team or a business or any other entity, you'll find that your communication will be much clearer. Thanks for watching.